Wait, did you just cry? Sinrik's voice trembled as he pressed his back against the broken metal panel behind him. He wasn't certain if he had startled her or if she was merely reacting to the cramped darkness of this derelict starship corridor. Her shimmering eyes, pale luminescent slivers framed by slender, opalescent ridges, glistened with tears. He tried not to stare, but the tension in the air practically crackled. His entire body was tense, keyed up from hours of searching the ghostly wreck, but there was something about her presence that made every nerve in his body hum. He took a careful step forward, arms raised in a gesture he hoped would convey that he meant her no harm. She shifted on her feet, and the faint glow in her skin, the patches of gentle radiance along her neck and arms, flickered in tandem with her ragged breath. Her voice, low and lilting, echoed in the tight corridor. "I am not crying. My species does not cry," she said, though the tears were still shining in her eyes, rolling down her cheeks. With a deliberate motion, she brushed them away using 3 delicately clawed fingertips, refusing to acknowledge them as anything but a curiosity. He noticed how her chest rose and fell as if her entire body was in shock from that touch they'd shared minutes ago. A mere hug, hardly more than a quick attempt to steady her when she almost collapsed. Sinrik felt oddly guilty about it all, as if he had intruded on a sacred boundary he didn't even know existed. He wanted to speak, to say something that might help, but he'd never been good at sensitive conversations. It wasn't a skill a freelance salvage pilot usually needed. He cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't mean to upset you. You were shaking, and I thought maybe you needed someone to. Your presence disrupted my balance," she said, her tone sharper than before. Her eyes glowed once more, streaks of shifting color swirling in her pupils. Beneath her scaled skin, which was a deep cerulean tinted with veins of silver, faint pulses of light traveled in small waves, as though each subtle shift in her mood or tension was announced by a glow of phosphorescence. "Your contact caused a reaction in me. We do not have such friction in my clan. It surprised me." He could almost taste the swirl of confusion, embarrassment, and wonder. Her name was Arathna. He had learned it when he found her half-conscious in the cargo hold, tangled in frayed straps of a harness that looked like it had been used to restrain her. The starship, battered and drifting near the edges of the Quell Rift, had become Sinrik's latest scavenging job. He'd come aboard expecting to salvage old circuit boards and maybe a functional quantum thruster or two. Instead, he found her. From the moment he first laid eyes on her, something in his chest had started pounding, a primal alarm or fascination that made his pulses race. Then she stirred, disoriented and trembling, and when she slipped on the cold metal floor, he'd instinctively caught her, arms drawing her into a protective embrace. That single moment of contact changed the entire energy between them, her alien physiology reacting in ways that neither had anticipated. He dared to take another step toward her, adrenaline and compassion warring in him. The corridor lighting flickered, the emergency diodes spitting out sparks of red illumination that illuminated her in staccato bursts. "I don't want to leave you alone in this wreck," he said softly. "This place is falling apart, and whoever left you like this might still be nearby. Please let me help." She looked at him with an expression that hovered between defiance and curiosity. Her shoulders lifted, revealing a row of shimmering spines that ran along her back. They quivered as if responding to an internal flux. "I do not trust you. I do not trust any human. Yet, you do not appear to be like the ones who boarded my clan's vessel. You wear no insignia, and you carry no collar." The mention of a collar made her swallow sharply, and he guessed there was a memory there, a painful reminder of captivity. "Very well. I will let you help me, for now. But I will keep my guard." He nodded, relief mingling with a strange sense of protectiveness he had no business feeling for an alien he just met. "I'm Sinrik," he offered. "I mean you no harm. Let me just get you somewhere safe." She exhaled. Her eyes fell on him, the tears from before replaced by an earnest concern. "I am Arathna. But do not believe I am weak. If you betray me, I can, and will, defend myself." They started down the corridor, stepping over hunks of twisted metal and smashed cargo containers. All around them, drifting sparks floated from torn wiring in the ceiling. More than once she staggered, forcing him to catch her elbow. Every touch sent a shudder through her body, sparks of that odd luminescence coursing along her skin. Each time, she pressed her lips tight in concentration, as if trying to maintain composure. He felt guilty for noticing how powerfully responsive she was to him, but ignoring it proved impossible. It was tangible, the heat simmering between them, complicated by their precarious situation. It wasn't long before they reached a collapsed section of corridor that forced them to descend deeper into the ship's belly, a place he hadn't explored yet. He used a small handheld scanner to find a clear path, but the device flickered, battered by the ship's failing electromagnetic field. "This way," he said, turning down a narrower passage that looked mostly intact. Along the walls, they found flickering alien script, likely the language of whichever species originally owned this vessel. Arathna trailed her fingers across a portion of it, and a ripple of light glowed on her fingertips, as though the writing itself recognized her. The moment was mesmerizing, but it ended as soon as it had begun, replaced by a low groan of metal overhead. She startled and pressed close to him. Her eyes darted around the corridor's corners, and she inhaled shallowly. "This ship is old. And it's not from my clan's territory. I think those who captured me used it as a temporary hold. They brought me, along with others. I don't know if they survived." He set a hand on her shoulder, but she flinched from the contact. Again, that low surge of luminescence pulsed through her body. "I'm sorry," he said. "If there are others, we'll look for them. But right now we need a safe place to hide or a viable exit. These compartments could blow at any time." Arathna nodded, though her eyes remained clouded by worry. She took a moment to compose herself, squaring her shoulders and flexing the spines on her back as if testing her strength. "Yes, you are right. But my body... I feel strange. I feel this trembling in my core." She pressed a hand over her abdomen, the faint glow intensifying there. "It is warm, uncomfortable. And it started when you touched me." Her blunt honesty made him flush, though he tried to remain practical. "Maybe it's some sort of shock or leftover sedation from whoever held you captive. Let's just get out of here. My ship is docked to the starboard side. If we can reach the docking latch, we can leave this wreck behind." She eyed him again, her gaze searching. Then she fell into step beside him. The corridor narrowed, forcing them to walk in single file at times, but each time the path angled too sharply, he reached back to steady her, and each time she flinched at his touch. He wished he could break this tension, but was uncertain how. The banter in his head battled with the severity of the situation. A salvage pilot like him wasn't used to playing hero, nor was he used to navigating the complex signals of an alien woman whose body seemed to glow whenever he brushed her arm. Finally, they found an old hatch that led into what must have been a storage deck. Cynric pried it open, and they stepped inside, mindful of how the deck plates groaned underfoot. "I see a cargo elevator at the far end," he said, illuminating the space with a flickering beam from his wrist lamp. The elevator's doors were slightly ajar, and old cables dangled overhead. Far across the wide room, he spotted what looked like a battered piece of the hull peeled open by some catastrophic blast. Through that tear, the cosmos shimmered with far-off starlight. The atmosphere inside still held, presumably thanks to partial containment fields, but the entire area felt precarious. Arathna surveyed the space, arms crossed over her chest. "We have little choice but to try," she said, stepping forward. "Let us—" She broke off, one hand shooting up to cover her mouth as she doubled over. A choked sob escaped her, tears once again welling in her eyes. "I do not understand why this keeps happening." Cynric hurried to her side, resting one hand gently on her back. She stiffened, but he felt the trembling beneath his palm. "It's okay," he murmured. "We'll figure it out. Maybe your body is just in shock. Or maybe it's how your species processes fear. Whatever it is, you're not alone." She lifted her face, tears shimmering on her cheeks again. Her expression was starkly vulnerable. "My clan does not cry. Instead, We release pheromones and chemical signals to communicate distress. We do not weep as you do. But this, it feels like I cannot control it. He wanted so badly to soothe her. Without thinking, he drew her against his chest, arms around her shoulders. She tensed, drew a breath, and then that faint light beneath her skin exploded in luminescent waves of shifting color. She let out a stuttered gasp, her body trembling. For an instant, he thought she might push him away, but instead her hands fisted in his jumpsuit, clinging as though that fleeting contact was something she both craved and feared. The moment stretched, taut and laden with an electric hum. She shuddered, burying her face against his chest, and he felt a flash of warmth spread across his own skin. He didn't entirely understand it, but he held her, hoping that in some intangible way, he was giving her whatever comfort she needed. He could feel her heartbeat, fast, thrumming in time with his. At length, she pulled back, eyes luminous in the darkness. She wiped her cheeks with the backs of her hands and inhaled raggedly. This is very confusing for me. The tension in her voice was clear, but so was a spark of gratitude. But your touch does something. It's like it spurs my body into a cycle. I can't describe it well in your language. Cycle? He asked, feeling a flutter of unease and fascination. She breathed deeply, and the glow in her abdomen sparked. A reproductive cycle, she finally admitted. Her face, already alien with its bioluminescent planes, somehow managed to look abashed. Your warmth triggered something inside me. I was not ready for that. My species only ovulates under certain conditions, especially under emotional duress or intense physical contact. Her shoulders trembled, the ridges at her neck quivering. He felt a rush of heat travel from his collar to his cheeks. I had no idea. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. But part of him was enthralled by the idea that a simple hug might have sparked something so powerful in her. It was bizarre, but also, it pulled at some deep place in his chest. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe while she was going through these changes she clearly hadn't expected. She swallowed, struggling to maintain composure. I am not angry with you. But we must be careful now. My biology is in flux. My emotions. I'm finding them overwhelming. Before he could respond, a dull boom reverberated through the ship's hull. A harsh red light flared to life overhead, and the floor beneath them began to quake. Cynric realized with a sudden twist of dread that a section of the starship had ruptured deeper within the structure. The entire vessel might tear apart at any moment. We need to move, he muttered, taking her hand before she could protest. He led her quickly across the deck, toward the old elevator, bracing himself for another tremor. She followed, her grip in his sweaty palms surprisingly strong. Together, they reached the elevator's half-broken doors, prying them open enough to slip inside. The lift's control panel flickered, but after a few desperate tries he managed to spark it to life. The antiquated system screeched, cables whining as it began to descend. Arathna braced herself against the opposite railing, her gaze on him. He saw the question burning in her eyes. She still didn't fully trust him, but she needed him to survive. He wasn't sure if that made him feel proud or terrified. The ride was agonizingly slow. At one point, the lift shuddered to a halt, plunging them into darkness. She let out a startled cry, and he reached for her hand, forgetting everything but the need to assure her she wasn't alone. Once again, the contact made her glow. He didn't need the emergency diode or his wrist lamp. Her skin illuminated the lift cage in gentle pulses of aquamarine and lavender. Her tears once again shimmered on her cheeks, and she turned her face away, embarrassed. Don't, he said softly, brushing her tears with a fingertip. Don't feel ashamed. It's beautiful in a way. She studied him with an expression filled with wonder. Your words confuse me. Humans are cruel or impersonal in my experience. You speak kindly. He exhaled, letting out a shaky laugh. I'm not always kind. I'm just a salvage pilot trying to earn enough credits to keep my ship running. But you... I can't leave you to die here. The lift jerked and began moving again. Let's just get to my vessel. I'll figure things out from there. She nodded, though that tension in her stance never quite left. Still, a small glimmer of trust flickered in her gaze. And with that, they descended deeper into the broken starship, not knowing what dangers lay below but bound together by necessity and a strange surge of chemistry that neither fully understood. They stepped out onto a deck that smelled of smoke and burnt electronics. The corridor walls were charred, wires sparking overhead. Cynric coughed, waving away the lingering haze. A guttural growl drifted from somewhere ahead, and he froze. Arachna tensed beside him, her spines flaring with alarm. Slowly, they edged closer, and then they saw it, a pair of large, heavily armed individuals rummaging through crates near a shattered bulkhead. Cynric recognized the silhouettes, slavers, or some variant of that trade. They wore makeshift armor and carried weapons that gave off a dangerous hum. One looked up, noticing the faint glow from Arachna's skin. Cynric didn't think, he acted. He grabbed Arachna's hand and pulled her back around the corner just in time to avoid a bolt of sizzling energy that exploded against the corridor wall. The reverberation made his teeth chatter. "Damn it," he whispered, pressing himself flat against the bulkhead. He felt her trembling at his side, but when he chanced to glance at her face, her jaw was clenched with fury more than fear. "Those are the ones," she hissed, eyes narrowing. "Or at least they serve the same overlord who took me. They will not let us escape." He peeked around the corner, counting 2. He spotted more movement in the darkness, so possibly 3 or 4. He swallowed hard. Not great odds. "We can't fight them all. We need a distraction or another route." She scanned the corridor, noticing a corridor hatch overhead. "We can climb. That duct might lead us around them, at least." Without further discussion, they hurried to pry open the duct's grated cover. Cynric boosted Arachna up first, trying and failing not to notice the lithe grace of her body as she hoisted herself inside. She reached down, her glowing fingertips lacing with his, and pulled him up with surprising strength. For a moment, they were pressed together in the cramped space, her body's heat enveloping him. The glow of her skin reflected off the metal walls, creating an otherworldly hush. She stared at him, breath coming fast, and he swallowed down the sudden urge to brush a stray tear from her cheek or run his fingers along the shimmering patterns on her neck. They began crawling through the duct, the metal creaking beneath them. As they inched along, the muffled sounds of the slavers rummaging and cursing filtered through the walls. Each clang or shout sent a jolt of unease through Cynric. He glanced behind to see how Arachna was doing, and was relieved to see a determined set to her face. If anything, she seemed fueled by anger toward these captors who had stolen her from her clan. Every so often, she'd pause and press an ear to the duct wall, listening for the route that would lead them away from confrontation. They traversed a twisting path until they came upon a vertical shaft that plummeted to a lower deck. Cynric tested the ladder's rungs, wincing when one snapped off with a loud clang. Arachna motioned for him to hold still. They listened for shouts or footsteps, but it seemed the noise had gone unnoticed. Carefully, they lowered themselves rung by rung, breath held each time the rusted metal squeaked under their weight. At the bottom, the duct opened onto another corridor. Cynric inched the grating aside and peered out. It appeared empty, though the lights flickered ominously. They climbed out, hearts pounding. He recognized the corridor signage from when he'd first boarded. "We're close to the docking tube," he breathed, hope surging. But before he could let relief settle in, he heard a furious cry echo from somewhere behind them. Heavy footsteps pounded on metal. The slavers had discovered their trail. Arachna locked eyes with him, and in her gaze, he saw a promise of fierce determination. "Let us run," she said. They sprinted through the corridor, boots slamming against the deck plates. Sparks fell from overhead wires, and at one point, the ship shuddered so violently that they both lost their footing. Cynric crashed into the wall, scraping his forearm. Arachna stumbled over his legs, yelping. The warmth of her body pinned him briefly to the floor, the swirling luminescence crackling across her skin. Their eyes met for one quivering instant of closeness. Her breath kissed his lips, and he felt an undeniable pull. Then, from behind them, a bolt of sizzling plasma scorched a hole in the wall. Move! He hissed. They scrambled to their feet and burst into a sprint again. The docking corridor was just ahead, its sealed hatch beckoning like a final gateway. He hammered his fist against the control panel, praying the old system would still respond. The doors hissed open a fraction. Another plasma bolt ricocheted off the bulkhead overhead, showering sparks. Arathna bit back a cry, ducking behind him as a second bolt was passed. The door opened fully, and they dove through, hitting the floor in a tangle of limbs. Cynric slammed a palm onto the emergency override, and the door screeched shut. The sealed hatch thrummed, the lock engaging. He knew that wouldn't hold the slavers for long, but it gave them a few precious moments. They bolted down the docking tube, which led to his small ship, the Wayward Star. The airlock recognized him and cycled open automatically. Once inside, he rushed to the console to trigger the manual detach procedure. Arathna leaned against the bulkhead, chest heaving, tears threading down her cheeks as she struggled to regulate her breathing. Her body glowed sporadically, waves of color chasing across her arms. "They will come," she gasped. "They do not give up easily." Cynric nodded. "Let's see them try to chase us in a broken hunk of metal." His heart hammered. He fired up the engines, ignoring how they sputtered at first. Then a deep rumble signaled the thrusters catching. He popped the docking clamps, and the Wayward Star peeled away from the drifting wreck. In the viewport, the battered starship drifted, half consumed by a blossoming fire in its midsection. He hoped the slavers didn't have time to launch any pursuit craft. He swiveled in his pilot's chair to face her. She stood in the center of the small cabin, hugging herself. The tears in her eyes glistened, but there was also something else, a profound relief. "We escaped," she whispered. "But now what?" He reached out, beckoning her closer. She came, hesitantly, her glowing gaze shifting between him and the swirling view of starlight outside the cockpit. "I need to get us into warp distance from that slaver crew," he said, double-checking the NAV display. "Then we can talk. Figure out what to do next." She swallowed, nodding. "All right." Silence fell as he maneuvered the Wayward Star away from the danger zone. The moment they cleared the ship's gravity well, he engaged the sublight thrusters, pushing them further until the NAV computer signaled safe jump distance. With a decisive flick, he engaged the FTL drive, feeling the subtle lurch as the ship slipped into faster-than-light travel. They were safe, for the moment. He leaned back, raking a hand through his hair. His entire body thrummed with adrenaline. When he finally dared to look at Arathna, she was staring out the window, tears still clinging to her luminous cheeks. "Hey," he murmured softly, approaching her. "You okay?" She shook her head in an oddly elegant gesture, the spines along her neck flattening. "I do not know what I am anymore." Her voice was heavy, as though she carried the weight of her entire clan on her shoulders. "Everything is changed." She hesitated, then looked at him with watery eyes. "You saved me. You risked your life. Why?" He studied her, uncertain how to put his jumbled emotions into words. "I guess I couldn't just watch someone get hurt or taken against their will. Especially not someone who clearly doesn't deserve it." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I'm a salvage pilot, yeah, but I'm not heartless." Her tears pooled, reflecting the console lights and shimmering patterns. Before he could second-guess himself, he slipped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. She didn't resist this time. Instead, she relaxed against him, resting her head on his chest. He felt the warmth of her body, the subtle buzz of that alien glow beneath her skin. To his surprise, a small sob escaped her, but it was different from before. Less anguished, more released. He rubbed her upper arm. "We'll figure it out, Arathna. I promise." She sniffled, pressing her nose briefly to the collar of his jumpsuit. "I do not cry, and yet I cannot stop." Her voice quivered with a mixture of frustration and relief. After a moment, she pulled back, searching his face. "When you touched me before, I felt something powerful inside me. My clan's texts speak of a phenomenon that occurs when certain conditions are met, a bonding heat, a cycle triggered by emotional closeness. It can lead to fertility surges. What I felt, it was intense. He swallowed, heat rushing to his face. Yeah, you said that earlier. Ovulating. Are you okay? I mean, physically? She closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly. I feel strange, unsettled. My body wants more contact. It craves something. She opened her eyes, a flush of color crossing her cheeks in an unmistakable expression of vulnerability. But it feels like a trap, too. I do not understand you or your people. I only know your warmth makes me want to. She cut herself off, looking away. His heart kicked in his chest. He recognized the swirl of tension between them. He also recognized she was in no position to be rushed. We're safe for now, he said gently. Let's get you settled. I've got a small med bay on board. Maybe we can figure out if there's a sedative or something to help calm your system until we can find more permanent help. Reluctantly, she nodded. Yes. I suppose that is wise. Yet she lingered in his arms a moment longer, as if torn between the safety she felt in his presence and her fear of what her body was urging her to do. Then, with a soft sigh, she stepped away, arms wrapped around herself. Lead the way. He guided her out of the cockpit and down the narrow corridor that led to a cramped med bay. The Wayward Star wasn't a large ship, it was more of a glorified shuttle with cargo space. The med bay was a single bed, some monitors, and a half-stocked cabinet of supplies. He motioned for her to sit on the bed while he rummaged for anything that might help in alien physiology. It was a shot in the dark, but maybe at least a mild painkiller or muscle relaxant might ease her tension. This might or might not help, he said, holding up a small auto-injector. It's a general anti-inflammatory that's safe for a variety of humanoid species, but I can't guarantee it won't have side effects for you. She studied the injector warily. Perhaps use a small dose? He nodded and dialed down the injection. Approaching her, he gently pressed the device against the smooth skin of her arm, mindful of the subtle color shifts rippling across her body. The injector hissed, delivering the dose. She inhaled sharply, her eyes closing as the medication began to circulate. Gradually, some of the tension in her posture seemed to ease. Her eyes opened, calmer but still uncertain. Thank you, she murmured. Then, in a quieter voice, in my clan, we do not embrace so freely. Physical contact is reserved for specific rituals. Yet you have touched me more in the last hour than I have been touched in my entire life. He felt that admission settle heavily between them, a new layer of intimacy that made his pulse flutter. He sank onto the stool beside the bed. I'm sorry if it was intrusive. I was just trying to help. She offered a wan, fleeting smile. I know. And part of me welcomes it. Another part is frightened. I get that, he said softly, reaching out but pausing before touching her hand. We'll go slow, however you want. She hesitated a moment, then placed her hand in his, her luminous eyes meeting his gaze. Yes. Slow. I appreciate it. Her words were halting, but sincere. They stayed like that in the quiet med bay, the hum of the Wayward Star's engines vibrating through the decks. Each passing second stretched with a sense of unspoken possibility. Outside, the stars blurred by as the ship traveled at FTL speeds, carrying them away from the wreck and the slavers. But inside the small ship, two unlikely companions hovered on the brink of something neither fully understood. She wiped away another tear, her lips curving in a hesitant, grateful smile. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze, feeling the subtle spark in his own veins. Finally, she cleared her throat, breaking the silence. I am still in danger. Those who captured me, they will not rest. They want me for my clan's unique genetic traits. I do not know if any others survived, but I must try to find them. Her eyes flicked to him, a question forming. He nodded. I'll help you. I can't say I'm an expert in outrunning slavers, but we'll do our best. I'm a decent pilot, and I know some hideouts, backwater stations where we can lay low. Once we gather more intel, maybe we can figure out a way to save any of your people who might still be out there. She let out a trembling breath of relief and squeezed his hand in return. Then we fight together. In that moment, tears glistened in her eyes again, but this time they carried a glimmer of hope. He brushed a thumb over her knuckles, letting the moment settle between them. There was a potent closeness there, fragile, uncertain, but growing. And as the wayward star sailed deeper into uncharted space, Cynric found himself unexpectedly tethered to a promise he never thought he'd make: to stand by this alien woman, protect her, and unravel the mysteries of her physiology and her fierce, luminous heart. Their uneasy alliance was only just beginning. He helped her settle into the small sleeping berth across from his own, rummaging through supplies for a blanket that might accommodate the delicate ridges that ran along her shoulders. She pressed herself into the bedding, her luminescent skin pulsing softly in the dim lighting. He tried to ignore the flicker of desire that stirred in his chest at the sight of her so vulnerable, focusing instead on making her as comfortable as possible. She needed rest, and so did he. He stepped out, letting her have privacy. Slumping in the cockpit chair, he sighed heavily. Only hours ago, he'd been a lone scavenger, drifting from job to job in the hopes of paying off a few debts. Now, he was smuggling an alien fugitive away from slavers, possibly pitting himself against a ruthless network. And he felt strangely alive. The memory of her tears, her luminous eyes searching his face, echoed in his mind. The way her body had responded to his slightest touch. The way she'd clutched him like he was the only anchor in a turbulent sea. Something about that raw vulnerability awakened a protectiveness in him he didn't know he had. He keyed in some autopilot checks, ensuring the ship remained on course. Then he leaned back, shutting his eyes. Sleep was calling, but his mind was too busy replaying everything: the slash of sparks in that corridor, the frantic flight down the docking tube, the way she confessed that his touch had triggered her reproduction cycle. It was surreal. Yet beneath the strangeness, it felt real in a way no other encounter in his life had been. Eventually, he dozed off, lulled by the hum of the engines. He woke to a soft sound in the corridor. Rubbing his eyes, he saw Arathna standing in the doorway, her face illuminated by the overhead glow strips. She looked uneasy, shifting weight from one foot to the other. "I am restless," she murmured. "May I sit with you?" He nodded, motioning to the co-pilot's seat. She approached, sliding into it, her posture stiff at first. The cabin's lights played over her features, highlighting the fine scales that curved along her jawline. He studied her discreetly, noting how her eyes flicked around, trying to make sense of his ship's control panel. He broke the silence gently. "Do you feel any better after resting?" "A bit," she said, voice hushed. "The medication calmed some of the ache, though my body still feels strange. Warm. Like an ember smoldering in my core." He swallowed, cheeks flushing. "Well, if you need anything." Her gaze flicked to him, intense and searching. "What I need, I am not sure I can ask of you. It is complicated. Touch is not casual for us. Yet my body craves it, as if it will release some tension. Our species rarely experiences it outside of a carefully arranged ritual with a chosen mate. Now it's happening here, with you, a stranger. My mind rebels, but my body, it calls." He felt a jolt of both empathy and desire. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said carefully. "This is your body. You decide how we proceed." She exhaled shakily, glancing down at her hands. "In my clan, we speak openly of such matters when the cycle comes. There is no shame in needing help to quell the heat. But I do not know if I can trust you fully yet. And I am ashamed of my tears, these unbidden feelings. Everything is too new." He leaned forward, resting a hand over hers. She tensed at first but then allowed the contact, her skin once again rippling with faint light. "We can go slow," he repeated gently. "We can figure out a plan that respects you, your culture, and your body. You have that right." She didn't pull away. Instead, she laced her fingers through his, letting out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she whispered. "It is comforting to hear that." They sat together in the soft glow of the cockpit, hands entwined, each trying to piece together a path forward. In the distance, stars streaked past in elongated lines. Arathna's breathing steadied, and so did Sinrik's. Something passed between them in that hush, an unspoken recognition of the bond that was forming, whether they were ready for it or not. Just as the moment threatened to deepen, the calm panel crackled. Sinrik jerked upright, nearly toppling from his chair. Arathna's hand slipped from his grasp, and she tensed, spines raising along her neck. The comm repeated a series of coded pulses, an incoming message on an open channel. Frowning, Sinrik tapped a few keys, filtering the static. "This is the merchant vessel Tarsal's Hope, broadcasting on all channels. We encountered a slaver craft near coordinates 59.3 by 18.1. They fired upon us, engines damaged, seeking assistance or rescue. Anyone out there, please respond." Arathna's eyes darted to him. "They might be from my clan, or another species the slavers attacked. We cannot just ignore them." Sinrik grimaced, dread coiling in his gut. "Those coordinates are close to where we came out of FTL. If we turn around, we'll be risking an encounter with the slavers again. We're not exactly armed to the teeth." She swallowed, color draining from her cheeks. "They might have others from my clan captive. But you are right, it could be a trap." He sat in torn silence, staring at the console. On the one hand, ignoring a distress call went against the code he tried to live by, even if it was a flimsy code, shaped by years of hardship. On the other hand, he had Arathna to consider. If she fell back into the slaver's clutches, he'd never forgive himself. Yet her gaze burned into him, silently pleading for help. "We might not survive a second fight," he warned gently. She inhaled, steeling herself. "Then we must be clever. We can approach carefully, scan for threats. We might find a way to free them without direct confrontation." He nodded, reluctant but moved by her resolve. "All right. We'll go. But we do this smart. One sign of trouble, and we jump out." She nodded in agreement, though her lips were pressed tight with worry. She placed a hand on his arm, and that faint luminescence stirred again. "Thank you," she whispered. "Whatever happens, thank you." He offered a tight smile and began programming the NAV computer for a careful approach back toward the coordinates. As the ship pivoted, he felt the tension coil through him again. The possibility that slavers, or some allied force, might be waiting was high. He glanced at Arathna, her posture braced, her eyes shining with determined light. He recalled how easily her tears had fallen, how quickly her body had responded to his, and how in that closeness he'd glimpsed her raw vulnerability. Now he saw a different side of her, fierce loyalty to her people, a willingness to risk her safety to answer a call for help. It stirred something in him, admiration, yes, and something deeper. He wanted to stand by her, shield her if he could, not just out of duty but out of something that was gradually tethering him to her. Under his breath, he murmured, "Hang on." Then he engaged the thrusters. The hum intensified, and the stars outside shifted once more as the wayward star set a new course into uncertain territory. Arathna's hand remained on his arm, her grip firm, as if telling him she would not face this alone. And though dread knotted his stomach, a small, quiet part of him felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, together they could carve out a path none of them had foreseen. They slipped out of FTL a safe distance from the distress signal, cautious not to appear on any sensors if the slavers lurked nearby. The region was a scatter of drifting asteroids and luminous gas clouds that pulsed faintly in the darkness. Sinrik engaged the stealth plating, an expensive mod he'd paid through the nose for last year. It wouldn't hide them from direct visual, but it might keep them off standard scans. Slowly, they cruised closer, scanning for signs of the Tarsal's Hope or any other ships. Arathna hovered at his side, her tension palpable. She tapped the console to amplify the distress call. The static-laced voice repeated itself, sounding more desperate with each pass. "Engines, heavily damaged. Life support failing, slaver craft in pursuit. Please, anyone." Finally, their scanner picked up a small merchant vessel limping through the void, venting atmosphere from a gash in its hull. Sinrik recognized the shape as a standard cargo runner. He also picked up the energy signature of a second craft a short distance away. It was bigger, bristling with weapons, almost certainly the slaver ship. Damn it, he muttered. Looks like they're just toying with the merchant, waiting for them to suffocate so they can board with minimal resistance. Arathna's eyes flared with that luminous intensity. We cannot let that happen. She glanced at him hopefully. He exhaled, scanning for an opening. We need a distraction. If we can draw that slaver ship away, the merchant vessel might get a chance to do emergency repairs. He motioned to a cluster of asteroids. We can hide in there. If I time it right, I can jettison a decoy signal, maybe fool them into thinking a larger ship is warping in. That might buy the merchant time to patch up or at least get some life support. Then we either get them out, or we do something else heroic and foolish. A tiny smile touched her lips. You do not realize it, but you are kind. She put a hand on his shoulder, and he felt warmth spread through his own chest at her words. Or suicidal, he quipped with a wry grin, though her touch steadied him. Let's see if it works. They maneuvered behind the nearest asteroid, cutting engines to minimal output. Once concealed, Cynric deployed the decoy drones, small devices with broadcast capabilities designed to mimic the signature of a much larger vessel. With a few expert taps, he tuned them to look like a heavily armed frigate warming up its weapons. A moment later, the decoy flickered on the scanners, painting the illusion that a new threat had arrived. Sure enough, the slaver ship reacted. The sensors showed it shifting course, presumably to assess this new intruder. Cynric let out a relieved breath. It's moving away from the merchant vessel, he said, adjusting the console readouts. They took the bait. Arathna peered at the merchant's life support signals. Their system is still dropping. We must hurry. He nodded, firing the thrusters to glide them toward the Tarsal's Hope. As they approached, the battered ship's hull loomed, faint glimmers of light escaping from cracks in the plating. Tarsal's Hope, this is the Wayward Star. Cynric hummed softly, hoping the slavers weren't still eavesdropping. We're here to help. Request permission to dock or otherwise assist with your repairs. Static greeted them, then a weak reply. We're losing ammo fast, hull breach on D-deck, crew incapacitated, any help, urgent. The voice broke off with a hiss of static. Cynric's stomach twisted. He brought the Wayward Star alongside the larger vessel, aligning with a functioning airlock that the scanners indicated was still pressurized. All right, he said to Arathna. We'll have to board quickly, try to seal the breach from inside. But we can't stay long, or that slaver's ship is going to realize the decoy is fake. She nodded, her expression grim. Let's go. They docked, the clamps locking onto the battered hull. Cynric pulled on a breather mask in case of partial depressurization. Arathna, for her part, explained she could survive in low oxygen for short periods, though she also donned the spare mask he offered. They stepped into the Tarsal's Hope's corridor, which was dimly lit and reeking of scorched metal. The gravity plating flickered, making each step feel uneven. Bodies of unconscious crew littered the floor, their faces pale, lips cracked from thinning air. Arathna knelt beside a middle-aged woman in a torn jumpsuit, checking for a pulse. She's still alive but needs air. She turned her glowing gaze to Cynric, who nodded and sprinted deeper into the corridor to find the control room. Over the comm, he said, there should be a system override to seal off the breach deck. If I can isolate that section, the rest of the ship might pressurize enough for them to breathe. Arathna stayed behind, trying to triage the unconscious crew. Now and then, Cynric heard her soft voice over the comm, telling him how many she'd found, whether they were stable. He cursed as he forced open a jammed hatch leading into the control chamber. The console sparked, half-fried, but he pried off a panel and hot-wired the system's manual override. After some frantic guesswork, he found the pressure seal commands. With a hiss and grinding protest, the ship's bulkheads groaned into place, isolating the worst of the hull breaches. Lights flickered, and an indicator on the console changed from red to amber, suggesting the rest of the ship was now stabilizing. He exhaled in relief, wiping sweat from his brow. I think that should hold for now, he muttered. Arathna, you copy? Her voice came back shaky but triumphant. Oxygen flow is coming back online. One of them woke up and is helping me move the others to a stable compartment. Hurry back, we have little time. He sprinted out of the control room, stumbling over debris. The slavers might return at any moment. They didn't have the weapons or manpower to fend off a full assault. He found Arathna in a corridor with a conscious crewman who was leaning heavily on her for support. The man's eyes widened in astonishment at the glow emanating from her skin, but in his condition, he didn't have time to question it. Cynric helped them get the rest of the unconscious crew into a side compartment that seemed to still have partial life support. The newly awakened crewman, though weak, insisted they could manage from here if they had a chance to do quick repairs. "Thank you," gasped the man. "If you give us a few minutes, we can get our backup thrusters online and jump out of here. Do you have time?" Cynric glanced at Arathna, a question in his eyes. She looked uncertain but nodded. "We can spare a few moments. But we need to keep watch for the slavers." They hurried to the Tarsal's Hope's engineering bay, where Cynric assisted with emergency repairs, hooking up the merchant ship's power core to a salvageable coil that would let them power the thrusters. Arathna stood guard in the corridor, tension thrumming through her body. He noticed her occasionally clutch her abdomen, as if a wave of discomfort hit her. But she said nothing, her stoic glare fixed on the corridor. The moment the thrusters roared back to life, a wave of relief swept through the crew. "All right, you should have enough for a short jump," Cynric said, stepping back from the console. "Get to safety. We'll do the same." A flicker on his wrist comm told him the decoy drones were about to be discovered. "Arathna, let's move. We have seconds." They ran back to the airlock, the Tarsal's Hope's crew shouting last-minute thanks behind them. The docking clamp disengaged, and Cynric sealed the Wayward Star's hatch, practically throwing himself into the pilot's seat. He launched them away just as the Tarsal's Hope's thrusters ignited in a shaky liftoff. On scanners, he saw the slaver ship turning back toward them, decoy be damned. "Brace!" he barked, fingers flying over the console. A beam of crackling plasma lanced out, missing them by mere meters. Cynric jammed the accelerator, the Wayward Star trembling under the strain. Arathna clung to the back of his seat, eyes wide. "Can we outrun them?" "We're sure as hell gonna try," he growled, punching coordinates for a blind FTL jump. Warnings flashed across the console. "They're locking weapons." Another jarring impact rocked the ship, a near miss. He cursed. The NAV computer word, calibrating the jump. Come on! The slaver ship fired again, this time grazing the Wayward Star's shields. Sparks cascaded from an overhead conduit, and the lights flickered. Then the console beeped, jump coordinates locked. Cynric slammed his hand on the jump drive control, feeling the ship shudder as it tore into FTL. The starfield stretched and twisted, dragging them away from the slaver's reach. Within moments, the system around them vanished into the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel. He kept the drive engaged longer than usual, wanting to put as much distance as possible between them and that slaver craft. Finally, he eased it back, letting them drop out of FTL in a quiet region of space. The NAV readouts indicated they were far from major routes. The ship's warning lights blinked incessantly, pointing out minor damage to the hull and shield generator. But they were alive. He sank back in the pilot's seat, chest heaving. Arathna stood behind him, hands braced on the seat's headrest. She was trembling, tears brimming in her eyes yet again. This time, when he turned to face her, she let out a breathy laugh that caught between a sob and relief. Her arms slid around his neck, and he let himself hold her. The tension of the last hour drained out of them both in a shaky embrace. "They made it?" she asked softly. Cynric nodded, rubbing her back. "I think so. Their jump drive was spinning up. I bet they got away." She closed her eyes, fresh tears slipping down her cheeks. "Good. That means we saved them. This is not what I expected from a human." He squeezed her gently, uncertain what to say to that. A swirl of emotion welled inside him, relief, fatigue, a protective warmth for the woman in his arms. She pulled back after a moment, her face a mosaic of luminescent color and wet streaks. The shifting glow across her skin pulsed again, reminding him of the complicated reason her body reacted so strongly to him. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, wincing. "You're in pain," he noted quietly. "Is it that cycle?" She nodded, cheeks flushing. "Yes. Intense. The stress from the fight must have escalated it. I feel like my body is igniting from the inside." She closed her eyes, inhaling unsteadily. "It wants contact, but I'm afraid." He felt the heat in his cheeks again. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," he said, voice hushed. "But if there's something I can do, hold you, rub your shoulders, anything, that might help, I'm willing." She swallowed, luminous tears slipping free. "You would do that? Even though we are strangers?" He bit his lip. "I don't think we're strangers anymore." That simple statement hung in the air, charged with meaning. She looked at him, her eyes glimmering with emotion he could almost touch. Then she nodded, a small but significant motion of trust. "Maybe just stay with me," she whispered. "Physical closeness calms the heat. It might help me rest without so much pain. But He gently took her hands. "It's all right. I'll stay." They moved to the small sleeping berth again, but this time he sat on the edge, letting her settle in with her head on his lap. She curled into him, eyes fluttering closed. The ship's overhead lighting was dim, giving the moment a sense of private warmth. She pressed against his torso, her breath hitching whenever he stroked a hand along her arm or shoulder. He tried to keep his touch gentle, soothing, but it was impossible not to notice how his own pulse raced every time she sighed or shifted. The glow beneath her skin pulsed in patterns, occasionally shimmering a bit brighter when he let his hand wander along her ridges. "It's so strange," she murmured after a while, half-lidded eyes gazing up at him. "My body demands more, but my mind is not ready for that. I do not want to use you like some breeding tool." He gave a wry smile, warmth blooming in his chest. "Well, I appreciate that. And I wouldn't want to do anything just because biology forced it. I'd like it to be a choice, mutual." He brushed a thumb over her cheek, wiping away a stray tear. Her skin felt cool and soft, with subtle ridges that made his fingertips tingle. She exhaled, tension ebbing from her shoulders. "Thank you for understanding." A thick silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the engines and the gentle beep of the Wayward Star's monitors. The adrenaline from the rescue and the chase began to fade, leaving them both drained. Arathna dozed against him, her luminescent patterns gradually calming. He watched her with a protective fondness, marveling that in such a short time he'd come to care so deeply about someone so utterly different, and yet, in many ways, not so different at all. Eventually he felt his own eyelids drooping. Carefully, he lifted himself, trying not to disturb her, and settled down next to her on the narrow bunk. She stirred, blinking awake. Her gaze flicked to him, and she shifted to let him lie beside her. Their bodies aligned in the cramped space, her head nestled against his chest, one leg draped over his. He felt the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the flicker of her luminous patches against his chest. It was the closest he'd been to anyone in years. She gave a little sigh that was almost content. A wave of warmth coursed through him, and for a moment, he forgot about slavers and uncertain futures. She murmured something in her own language, a soft whisper he couldn't understand. Then she closed her eyes and drifted, her tears finally spent. He pressed a light kiss to the top of her head, an instinctive gesture, and her spines relaxed. The hum of the ship lulled them both into a deep, hard-won rest. Outside, distant stars shimmered in an endless sky, unheeding of the improbable bond forming within the Wayward Star's narrow hull. They slept for hours, wrapped in each other's warmth. When he woke, she was watching him with those luminous eyes, her expression unreadable. He shifted, suddenly self-conscious. "Morning," he mumbled, though in space, morning meant nothing. How do you feel?" Her lips parted, and she took a slow breath. "Better," she said softly. "The heat is not as unbearable." She dropped her gaze, a slight flush coloring the edges of her cheeks. "But the closeness helped." "I did not," Cry in my sleep. He blinked. That's good. That means maybe you're stabilizing, right? She gave a small nod. Yes, possibly. A pause, then she looked up at him. I dreamed of my clan. Of how we used to gather in the glowing caves when the sun set, how the children would chase the fish that glowed in the pools. It felt so real, like I was there again. And then I woke and… She trailed off, tears threatening to brim again. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. I do not want that to be gone forever. He wanted to comfort her, but words failed. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand, letting the silence speak for him. Eventually, she inhaled and pulled herself upright, stretching. The ridges along her back stood out in a graceful line, and he found himself marveling at her form. She must have felt his eyes because she glanced at him, a slight quirk to her lips. He coughed, looking away, which only made her chuckle softly. The tension between them relaxed for a moment. They left the berth and checked the ship's sensors. No sign of pursuit. The slaver's ship was nowhere within range, and the Tarsal's Hope had successfully jumped away. They might have a moment's peace. Cynric took advantage of the lull to do some repairs, patching the damage to the shield generator while Arathna hovered in the corridor, occasionally handing him tools. He noticed she stayed close, as if some part of her needed his proximity. He also caught glimpses of her wincing now and then, pressing a hand to her abdomen, though she tried to hide it. When the repairs were done, they shared a makeshift meal from his ship's rations. She sniffed at the packets curiously before sampling them with a careful pinch of her clawed fingertips. The textures must have been strange, but she seemed grateful for the sustenance. Afterward they cleaned up, side by side in the cramped galley. The domestic mundanity of it all felt surreal, as if they'd lived together for ages. That sense of closeness both comforted and unnerved Cynric. As they wiped down the counters, she spoke quietly. Cynric, I was thinking. I want to find out who is behind all this. The slavers, the ones who targeted my clan. They must have had a buyer, someone who knew of our biology. I cannot move on without answers. He rested an elbow on the counter, regarding her. Yeah, we can't just keep running forever. If they want you that badly, they'll keep hunting. I might know someone who can dig up data on black market dealings, an old contact on Devara Station, though I can't promise she'll be thrilled to see me. She cocked her head, shimmering spines tilting. An old flame? He nearly choked on his breath. No, not exactly. More like… I owe her money. A lot of it. But she's good at sniffing out criminal networks. If anyone can figure out who's behind this, it's her. We'll just have to handle it diplomatically. Or pay her off, somehow. Arathna pursed her lips in thought, then nodded. We should try. I must know if my people still live, if they are imprisoned. And if we find them, I want to free them. He admired the fire in her eyes. Okay. Let's set course for Devara Station. But we'll keep an eye out for slaver presence. Devara's a busy hub, anything goes there. She reached out, touching his hand lightly. I am ready, as long as we stay together. That simple statement, as long as we stay together, made his chest tighten with a swirl of relief and affection. He covered her hand with his, giving it a gentle squeeze. Then, turning to the cockpit, he keyed in the coordinates for Devara Station, setting them on a path that would take a couple of days of FTL travel. It was enough time, he hoped, for them to rest and brace themselves for whatever awaited. Once the wayward star jumped to FTL again, they found themselves with hours to spare. Cynric tinkered around the cockpit, verifying the route, while Arathna paced restlessly, occasionally pausing to examine the star charts or the faint glow of the control panels. At one point, she stood behind him, leaning over his shoulder. The proximity made his skin tingle. He heard her soft breaths, felt the warmth that radiated from her. He turned slightly, lips parting to ask if she needed anything, and his gaze met hers at close range. Her eyes flicked down to his mouth, and a flicker of that alien glow traced along her throat. What is it? He asked softly. She swallowed. The heat stirs again, less violently but persistently. I keep recalling your arms around me. The way you calmed my tears. It feels like I want more of that closeness. But I am unsure if that is wise or if it is only the cycle speaking. He placed a hand on hers, giving her the freedom to pull away if she wished. She didn't. Maybe it's both, he murmured. We can take it slow. Then, with cautious gentleness, he drew her forward until she stood between him and the console. He rose from the pilot's chair, facing her. Her breath came a little faster, her luminous patterns shifting with heightened emotion. The spines along her neck rose in a delicate fan. He brought a hand up, brushing his fingers lightly across those spines, and she shivered, closing her eyes. Is this okay? He whispered. She gave a trembling nod. Yes, keep going. Her voice was tight with anticipation, so he continued, letting his fingertips explore the curve of her neck, the ridges that led down to her shoulder. She let out a soft sound that was half sigh, half moan, and he felt his heart thud. Her eyes fluttered open, and she leaned in, pressing her body gently against his. The faint friction ignited a low hum of energy between them. He cradled her face, thumbs lightly stroking the paths of tears that had dried on her cheeks. She leaned into his touch, her lips parting, breath hot. When their mouths finally met, it was tentative at first, an experiment in bridging the gap between species. But the taste of her, cool and tinged with a faint mineral sweetness, sent a shiver of arousal through him. She gasped softly, her arms sliding around his waist. The luminescence beneath her skin pulsed like a living tapestry of desire. He let his hands roam, mindful of her comfort, feeling the shift of scales along her back, the delicate ridges that reacted to his every touch. She pressed closer, deepening the kiss with a hunger that was raw and searching. He answered in kind, losing himself in the moment. The tension of the last days seemed to melt away in that intimate exchange, replaced by a swirl of longing and comfort all at once. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. She laid her forehead against his, eyes luminous with an emotion that went beyond simple lust. Something deeper swam there, trust, relief, longing. He brushed a stray lock of hair-like filament from her face, smiling shakily. We can stop any time, he murmured. There's no rush. She cupped his cheek, a small smile curving her alien lips. I want to continue, but carefully. My body's urging is strong, yet it is not just the cycle. I feel safe with you. He pressed another light kiss to the corner of her mouth, exhaling softly. You're safe, he assured. We don't have to figure it all out right now. We can just be here. She nodded, relaxing into his arms. They stayed that way for several minutes, exchanging light caresses and soft kisses. Each contact made her skin sparkle, her tears a distant memory replaced by a quiet wonder. Eventually, they drifted back to the bunk, where they continued exploring that closeness, learning each other's bodies in slow, halting increments. Whenever she trembled with uncertainty, he paused, letting her lead. Whenever she leaned into his warmth, he welcomed her. The hum of the ship cocooned them in privacy. It was intimate, raw, but not rushed. His heart hammered with every new sound she made, every luminous flicker that told him her body was responding to him in ways neither had expected. He felt alive, connected. In the afterglow of one particularly heated moment, she laid her head on his chest, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes again. But these tears looked different, more like a reaction to overwhelming emotion than sorrow. I keep crying, she said softly, almost apologetically. But it doesn't hurt as it did before. It's as if these tears are part of something good. He kissed her temple. It's okay to cry, he whispered. Human or alien, sometimes tears mean healing. She let out a shaky laugh, pressing closer. Then I hope I continue to heal, with you. They drifted off, entangled in each other's warmth, lulled by the steady hum of the engines. Despite the unknowns awaiting them at Devara Station and beyond, a fragile hope had taken root. Two souls from different worlds finding solace in each other's arms, forging a connection that felt as vast and mysterious as the starlit void they traveled. Over the next 2 days of FTL travel, their relationship deepened, shaped by moments of tender conversation and shared humor. Arathna showed him how her bioluminescence changed color with subtle shifts in mood. She teased him about his stockpile of ration bars that all tasted like chalk. He taught her how to interpret the ship's console readouts, joking that she was the first co-pilot who actually paid attention to the blinking lights. In their downtime, they tinkered with the star charts, fantasizing about places they might run off to once the threat of slavers was gone. Each time they touched, whether a brush of the hand in passing or a cuddle in the bunk, her glow responded, as if celebrating the bond forming between them. And each time, she teared up less, her emotional release gradually merging with a gentler, more familiar sense of closeness. Finally, Devara Station's coordinates loomed ahead, a swirling hub of neon lights and orbiting docks suspended against a backdrop of swirling dust clouds. Sinric dropped them out of FTL and approached carefully, mindful that the station's security checks were infamously lax but not non-existent. They'd need to pass a cursory inspection. Arathna slipped away to the bunk, cloaking herself in a hooded garment they'd cobbled together from spare cloth. With her unique appearance, it was better not to attract too much attention. Sinric guided the wayward star into a dingy docking port on the station's lower ring, an area known for smugglers, black market deals, and all manner of shady transactions. As soon as they disembarked, Arathna remained close by his side, her hood obscuring her features. The station's interior assaulted them with a riot of smells: spilled engine oil, fried alien cuisine, and the acrid tang of cheap stimulants. Neon signs flickered overhead, and throngs of various species bustled about, all wrapped up in their own hustles. "We're looking for a bar called the Blue Nova," Sinric told her quietly, weaving through the crowd. "That's where my contact, Kiana, usually sets up shop. Just keep an eye out. This place isn't exactly safe." She nodded, gaze alert from beneath her hood. Even so, Sinric sensed her curiosity. She'd never seen a place like this, a sprawling melting pot of alien species. Occasionally, she'd tense if someone stared too long, and he'd shift to block their view. Despite the towering metal corridors and the swirl of color, he felt an odd comfort in having her so near, a partnership forged in adversity. They reached the Blue Nova, a bar carved into the station's underbelly. Pulsating music throbbed behind the door. Sinric pushed inside, Arathna at his shoulder. The interior was dimly lit with swirling holographic patterns dancing across the walls. Smoke of unknown origin curled around the tables, where rough-looking patrons nursed drinks that glowed neon green or purple. He scanned the crowd and spotted Kiana, a tall, willowy woman with cybernetic implants glinting along her temples. She lounged in a corner booth, one leg crossed over the other, her dark eyes flicking up in recognition the moment he stepped in. "Sinric," she said in a low purr when they approached, arching an eyebrow. "Thought you were dead or worse." "Yeah, nice to see you too, Kiana," he replied, sliding into the booth. Arathna slipped in beside him, keeping her hood low. "I need a favor." Kiana let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course you do. You still owe me." Her gaze lingered on Arathna, curiosity piqued. "And who's this?" "A friend," Sinric said, not elaborating. "We're in trouble with slavers. We need info. Who's buying up exotic aliens, especially from her clan? We want to know who's behind it." Kiana leaned forward, tapping a polished fingernail on the table. "Slavers, huh? You really stepped in it this time. I might have heard rumors. But I'll need payment. Credits, or something else valuable." Sinric grimaced. "I'm short on credits, but maybe we can work out a trade. I have a stash of salvage tech, some experimental power cores that might fetch a decent price." Kiana pursed her lips, eyes flicking again to Arathna, who remained silent. "I'll consider it. But knowledge isn't free, and these slavers you're messing with, rumor is they're connected to some big corporate names. The kind that run labs off the grid. They pay top dollar for certain genetic stock." Arathna stiffened beside him. Sinric slipped a hand under the table to squeeze her knee reassuringly. "Any names?" he pressed. Kiana shrugged, her mechanical eye implant whirring as it focused. "A few whispers about a group called Etheris Industries. Supposedly they're fronting some hush-hush genetics program. That's all I've got so far. But if I sniff around, I might find more. Arathna cleared her throat softly, a quiet but firm sound. Then do it. I will pay whatever is necessary. Her voice, with its alien accent, made Kiana's eyes narrow in interest. And you are? Sinric interjected. Her name's not important. Just help us out, Kiana. Kiana's smirk revealed she wasn't convinced, but she nodded anyway. Fine. Give me half a day to see what I can dig up. I'll transmit the coordinates of my workshop. Bring the salvage. I'll talk when I see what it's worth. Sinric exhaled. Deal. Before they could stand, Kiana's gaze turned sly. One more thing. Some folks have been asking about a certain salvage pilot with a small ship, traveling with unusual cargo. Word spreads fast here. If you're not careful, your slavers might track you down. Sinric's jaw tightened. We'll handle it. They slipped out, tension rolling off Arathna in waves as they merged into the crowd. She gripped his arm. Ethyrus Industries. I have never heard of them, but if they are big enough to hire slavers. She stopped, glancing around warily. I do not like this place. He brushed a comforting hand over her arm. We'll get what we need and go. I promise. He checked the data Kiana had sent to his handheld. Her workshop is 2 levels down. Let's grab the salvage from the Wayward Star and bring it over. They made their way back to the docks, constant vigilance on the swirling crowds. Eventually, they were hauling a crate of spares from his cargo hold when Arathna froze, her eyes flaring wide beneath her hood. She grabbed his sleeve, pressing back into the shadows. He followed her gaze, and spotted 2 heavily armored figures scanning the area near a row of ships. Even from this distance, he recognized their posture. Slavers or mercenaries. Panic lanced through him. Damn, he hissed. They must have traced us. Quick, this way. Keeping a low profile, they skirted around cargo containers, trying to avoid the mercenaries' line of sight. Their hearts hammered in unison. Arathna's hood was pulled low, but her luminous tears threatened to betray her if she got too agitated. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, grimacing. They managed to slip away, out of the docking ring, heading toward the station's lower levels. The corridors grew narrower and darker, neon signs replaced by flickering overhead lights. The hum of distant machinery rattled the walls. Finally, they found Kiana's workshop, a door marked only by a flickering control panel. Sinric keyed in a code, and they slipped inside. The space was cramped with half-dismantled drones, consoles, and data servers. Kiana was seated at a terminal, screens reflecting off her implants. You weren't joking, she said, eyes flicking from them to the crate. Slavers crawling around the docks, and here you are, dropping by. We don't have time for chit-chat, Sinric said tersely, plunking the crate down. What did you find out? Kiana stood, her slender form moving gracefully around the clutter. She popped open the crate, rummaging inside. Decent gear, she noted. As for Ethyrus Industries, I found references to a remote facility in the Orith Belt. No official records, but rumors suggest heavy security and a specialized lab. The talk is that they're engineering new biotech solutions for corporate clients, possibly involving alien genetics. If your friend's clan is on their wish list, that's where they might be taken. Arathna's breath caught. Then we must go there. Kiana cocked an eyebrow. You're serious? It's basically a fortress. You'll need more than a rickety salvage ship to break in. Sinric crossed his arms. We'll figure it out. Just tell me if you can get me any floor plans or access codes. Kiana shrugged, turning to her console. I'm no miracle worker, but let me see. She typed rapidly, data streaming across the screen. Arathna stood close, almost vibrating with tension. Sinric rested a reassuring hand on her back. Her glow was subdued, but he could feel her trembling just beneath the surface. After several minutes, Kiana sighed. Not much. The place is well off the grid. I do see references to shipments delivered monthly, likely with live cargo. If you could intercept a transport, maybe that'd get you inside. Arathna's eyes narrowed, lips set in a determined line. We will do it. For my clan. Kiana gave a low whistle. Damn, you're in deep. All right, I'll keep looking for a better angle. In the meantime, you two lay low. The slavers must already know you're here. Cynric nodded. Thanks, Kiana. He watched her rummage through the crate again, probably deciding which pieces to resell for quick profit. He couldn't blame her. This was how deals worked in Devastation's underbelly, information for salvage. He just hoped it would be enough to stay one step ahead. They left her workshop with the data on Etheris's facility loaded into Cynric's handheld. Arathna walked beside him, silent and focused. He could tell her mind was swirling with the possibility that her people might be imprisoned in some distant lab. Every so often, she'd wipe a stray tear before it could slip free. He noticed how she maintained a physical closeness to him, shoulders almost touching, as if drawing reassurance from their shared warmth. Back at the Wayward Star, they boarded cautiously. No sign of the mercenaries who'd been prowling the docks earlier, but that didn't mean they weren't lurking. Inside the ship, Arathna sighed with relief, sliding back her hood and letting her spines expand. The swirling patterns on her skin flickered with pent-up emotion. She turned to him, expression taut. We have a lead. If my people are there. He nodded, stepping close. We'll go. But not blindly. We need a plan, maybe allies. He brushed his knuckles along her arm, feeling her tension. I'll search my contacts for any potential help. This is bigger than us alone. She exhaled, tears dampening her lashes. Thank you? Without you, I would still be a captive on that starship. I owe you more than I can express. Her voice trembled, and he felt a pang of protectiveness so strong it nearly buckled him. You don't know me, he whispered, easing her into his arms. She leaned against him, burying her face in his shoulder. Her tears warmed the fabric of his shirt, and he held her, rubbing slow circles on her back. The faint glow of her body enveloped them in a soft aura. He stroked her hair, letting her release the pent-up fear and sorrow. At length she quieted, drawing back just enough to gaze into his eyes. Your touch keeps me sane, she confessed. And yet I do not want to trap you in my heat cycle or my people's troubles. He shook his head. You're not trapping me. I'm here because I choose to be. And we'll figure out your cycle as we go. You're more than that, Arathna. Her luminous eyes teared up again, but this time, she smiled through it. Gently, she pressed her lips to his. The kiss was lingering, laced with gratitude and longing. He savored the quiet moment, praying that no outside threat would tear them away from each other before they could see this through. The next hours were a flurry of planning. Cynric pored over star charts, cross-referencing shipping routes to the Orith Belt, while Arathna alternated between assisting him and battling waves of her cycle. Each time she felt an onrush of heat, she sought him out, letting his presence calm her. Their closeness grew, forging an unspoken bond neither denied. They found stolen moments in the bunk, in the cockpit, in the corridor, exchanging breathless kisses that soothed her body and awakened new depths of affection in both of them. Eventually, they decided on a risky approach, hijack or stow away on an incoming shipment to Etheris. They'd have to slip aboard a slaver transport, or a smuggler's freighter bound for that hidden facility. Once inside, they'd search for her clan. Cynric called in what few favors he had left, but most of his contacts balked at going near anything that big. A slender thread of hope emerged when Kiana messaged him with news of a shady pilot named Tagger who sometimes ferried cargo to remote labs. He was rumored to be stationed a few levels down, near the industrial docks. Under cover of station night, they left the Wayward Star again, navigating the labyrinth of corridors to find Tagger's rumored hangout. The sense of danger hung over them like a storm cloud. Arathna stayed hooded, clutching Cynric's arm as they descended a series of rickety spiral ramps into the bowels of Devara Station. The lights flickered, and the crowd thinned until only the occasional figure drifted by, usually up to no good. They found Tagger in a rundown cargo bay, arguing with a burly reptilian alien over payment. He was a lanky human with slicked back hair and a perpetual sneer. Cynric recognized the type immediately, smooth-talking, unscrupulous, always looking for the next big score. Approaching with caution, Sinric cleared his throat. Tagger, right? Heard you might have work for a man willing to take risks. Tagger eyed them, especially Arathna's hooded form. And who are you, friend? Call me CYN. He lied smoothly. I run a small salvage ship, but I'm looking to expand my horizons. I got wind you might be heading out to the Orith Belt. Tagger scoffed. What if I am? Doesn't mean I want a partner. He leaned sideways to get a better look at Arathna, who turned away. Your friend shy or something? Sinric tensed. She's had a rough time with slavers. Doesn't trust many. But she might have valuable talents. We heard you do specialized deliveries. We want in. Tagger's eyes flickered with sudden interest. Slavers, eh? Then you must know about Etheris. When neither responded, he smirked. All right. I do runs for them now and then. They pay well. Don't ask questions. If you want a piece of that action, you gotta prove your worth. Ship security's tight. Cargo's living, so it needs special handling. You two up for that? Sinric steadied himself, lying with practiced ease. We've handled live cargo before. We can manage. Tagger narrowed his eyes, sensing an angle. Maybe. I gotta run in a few days. If you do me a favor first, I'll consider letting you tag along. I need a certain piece of contraband from a nearby warehouse, items under heavy guard. You get it for me, I'll see about hooking you up. Sinric exchanged a glance with Arathna, whose mouth tightened in annoyance beneath her hood. They had no choice if they wanted a way in. Deal. Sinric muttered. Give us the details. A sly grin slid across Tagger's face. I like your style. Here. He tossed Sinric a small data chip. Location, access codes, blueprint. Don't get caught. Bring me the item intact, and we'll talk. As they left, Sinric felt the weight of the news tightening. This was a dangerous game. Help a smuggler's ring just to infiltrate an even more dangerous corporate lab. But Arathna's trembling hand on his arm reminded him why they did this, to find her kin, to free them if possible. He brushed his lips across her forehead, ignoring the curious stares of a few passers-by. We'll manage, he reassured her quietly. She nodded, trusting him. And so they delved deeper into Devara's underworld, bound together by a vow that had become more than just survival. It had become an act of hope, and perhaps, an unexpected love. Under station night they made their way to the warehouse Tagger indicated, weaving around security patrols and half-broken droids. Their hearts hammered as they bypassed the locked gate using the stolen codes. The interior was vast and murky, crates stacked to the ceiling. Arathna's hood glowed faintly in the gloom, her skin responding to the adrenaline surging through her. Sinric took point, scanning for cameras. Near the center of the warehouse, they found a secure chamber. The door was reinforced, a digital lock humming with energy. Watch my back, Sinric whispered, kneeling to pry open the control panel. Arathna stood guard, the tension in her posture visible. He tried not to panic at each beat the lock made, certain that any second an alarm might go off. Finally, the lock clicked, and the heavy door slid aside. Inside, a single crate sat on a pedestal. That must be it. Arathna breathed, stepping forward. The crate was sealed with corporate markings. A faint hiss of pressurized air escaped as they unlocked it. Inside lay a small cylinder containing some type of swirling blue liquid, likely extremely valuable. Sinric gently lifted it, heart pounding. Got it. Let's. An alarm blared overhead, lights flashing red. Intruders! A mechanical voice shouted. Intruders! Doors slammed around them as the warehouse went into lockdown. Run! Sinric barked, tucking the cylinder under his arm. Arathna tore off after him, her hood sliding back in her haste. Cameras swiveled, capturing her bioluminescent face, but there was no time to worry. They scrambled through the labyrinth of crates, hearing security droids clank into motion behind them. Lasers flared, scorching the air. They ducked behind a towering stack of crates, panting, adrenaline surging. This way. Sinric pointed to a side corridor. They sprinted, weaving through the flickering emergency lights. At one point, a droid rounded the corner, leveling a weapon at them. Arathna, eyes blazing, lunged forward, slashing at the droid's weapon arm with her claws. Sparks flew. Sinric tackled it from behind, sending it crashing. They bolted past, hearts pounding. At last, they reached a service door. Sinric used the data chip to override it, and they stumbled out into an alley behind the warehouse. Night air bit their faces, the station's artificial atmosphere recirculating in an acrid swirl. Behind them, sirens wailed. They fled, cylinder in hand, ignoring the startled shouts of vagrants who lurked in the gloom. Eventually, they slipped into a disused maintenance tunnel, collapsing against the wall to catch their breath. "Are you okay?" Sinric gasped, concern etched in his eyes as he examined Arathna. She was shaking, tears brimming once more from the overload of stress. But she nodded. "I'm unhurt." "You?" He grimaced, rubbing a bruise on his shoulder. "I'll live." He glanced at the cylinder. "Let's hope this was worth it. Let's get back to Tagger before the slavers or station security catch up to us." She swallowed, wiping her tears with a trembling hand. "Yes. Then we find my clan." He gently helped her to her feet, tucking her hood back over her glowing features. Together, they vanished into the station's underbelly, carrying the stolen contraband that might be their one ticket into the belly of the beast. Fear, hope, and their deepening bond fueled each step, either aware of how the next hours would bring them closer to a final reckoning that could shatter them, or forge them irrevocably together. They delivered the cylinder to Tagger in a cramped hangar bay near the station's lower rings. He grinned like a cat with stolen cream, confirming it was the real deal before nodding. "All right, you've proven useful. I'll let you hitch a ride on my next run to the Orth Belt. We leave tomorrow. Be ready." Sinric cast a wary glance at the row of armed thugs hovering near Tagger's ship. "We'll be there." He slipped an arm around Arathna's waist, guiding her away. As they retreated, he felt her tremble. The station lights glinted off her tears, which she brushed away angrily. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "We face them." He pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "We'll get through this. Together." And so they returned to the Wayward Star to wait out the night, huddled against the swirl of danger, clinging to the fragile comfort of each other's touch. Alone in the bunk, Arathna's cycle once again surged, fueled by her anxiety over the impending mission. He held her through the waves of heat, pressing slow kisses to her forehead, murmuring reassurances in her ear. She clutched him as if he were a lifeline, her tears slipping onto his neck. This time, though, she welcomed the closeness, no longer held back by fear. Their bodies moved together in a dance of gentle exploration, a precarious blend of need and tenderness. She gasped his name, spines flaring with luminous pulses. He answered her with quiet reverence. They found release in each other's arms, an affirmation of life in the face of looming threat. Afterward, they lay entwined, hearts calming. She brushed a faintly glowing fingertip across his cheek, eyes misty but calm. "I feel stronger with you. Like I am not alone in this fight." He kissed the tip of her finger. "You're not alone." Soft words, but full of promise. She nestled against him, drifting off with her ear to his chest, lulled by the steady beat of his heart. He, too, slipped into uneasy dreams of corporate labs and unknown dangers, haunted by the possibility that he might lose her before they could truly claim a future together. They woke early, nerves raw. Gathering a few essentials, they left the Wayward Star securely docked and made their way to Tagger's hangar. The pilot awaited them with a smirk. His ship, a bulky freighter with concealed compartments, hummed in the docking clamps. "All set?" Tagger asked, leading them aboard. Sinric and Arathna forced calm expressions, stepping into the gloom of the cargo hold. A few other hired hands milled around, glancing at them suspiciously. Tagger explained, "We'll drop out near the Orth Belt, pass through security, and deliver the cargo. You keep your heads down and stay out of sight. Once we dock, you're on your own. But if you cross me..." He tapped a blaster at his hip, letting the threat hang. Sinric just nodded. No sense provoking him. They settled in a hidden corner of the hold, arms around each other as the freighter took off. The voyage would take hours, possibly a day. Arathna closed her eyes, her breathing shallow. He pressed a reassuring hand to her back. "We'll find them," he whispered. "Have faith." She nodded, eyes full of quiet resolve. Time slipped by in uneasy stillness, the freighter's engines droning. Cynric dozed fitfully, Arathna nestled against him, each seeking comfort in the other's warmth. Eventually, a jolt announced their exit from FTL. Metallic clanks echoed as the ship maneuvered into a docking bay. Tagger's voice hissed over the comm. "Security check incoming. Stay hidden." Cynric and Arathna pressed themselves behind large crates, hearts pounding. Through a narrow gap, they saw uniformed guards board, scanning the cargo. The suits they wore bore the insignia of Ethris Industries. Cynric clenched his fists, reminding himself to breathe. One guard hovered near their hiding place, scanning with a device. Arathna covered her mouth, luminous tears threatening. The guard paused, frowned, then moved on. Relief washed through them as the group continued forward, verifying the cargo's manifest. Finally, Tagger's voice returned, low and sharp. "Cargo's clear. We're docking. 10 minutes. Then do what you want, but don't you dare mention my name if you get caught." The freighter shuddered to a halt. Cynric peered around the crates. Through a doorway, he glimpsed the docking bay beyond, a sterile environment with white walls and bright overhead lights. This was Ethris's fortress, a place rumored to hold captive aliens for genetic experiments. Arathna took a shaky breath, eyes reflecting fear and determination. He squeezed her hand. "Let's go," he whispered. Under cover of cargo workers unloading crates, they slipped out of the freighter. No one seemed to notice the hooded figure and the pilot creeping among them. Once outside the ship, they ducked behind a stack of supply containers, scanning for an exit. The facility spanned a massive complex, corridors branching off in all directions. Guards patrolled in pairs, armed with advanced weaponry. Cameras panned overhead. This was no small operation. Arathna pointed to a corridor with a sign in an alien script. "That language, it's from a clan allied to mine. Maybe they are here." Her voice wavered with hope and fear. He nodded, leading her that way. They kept to the shadows, slipping past the guard station while the sentries were distracted by a glitch in the lighting system. The corridors felt oppressively clean and bright, every footstep echoing. Eventually, they reached a sealed door labeled with vague medical symbols. Arathna pressed herself to the wall, tears glistening again. "I sense something. My spines, they vibrate. My clan must be near." His heart wrenched at her trembling voice. He pried open a wall panel to access the locking mechanism. After tense moments of reconfiguring wires, the door hissed open. They stepped inside, hearts hammering. A corridor stretched before them, leading to a series of observation chambers with transparent walls. Inside each chamber, forms moved, alien beings, some with luminescent markings reminiscent of Arathna's, others from different species. They wore restraints or lay on cots, eyes vacant with sedation. The hush was broken by the whir of medical equipment and the beep of monitors. Arathna's breath caught in her throat, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They are here," she whispered, voice breaking. She rushed to one chamber, pressing her hand to the transparent barrier. Inside, a figure with similar spines lay motionless, eyes half-lidded. "Mother." Arathna choked, barely audible. "They have my mother." Cynric set a hand on her shoulder, fighting back his own surge of rage. "We'll get her out. We'll get them all out." Her tears shimmered with heartbreak, and he realized that for all their closeness, he hadn't seen her this raw since the day he found her. It galvanized him. He scanned the chamber's access panel, searching for an override. "I can open it, but we need a plan to get them out of the facility. We can't carry them all back to Tagger's ship. He'll never allow it." Arathna wiped her tears, resolve hardening in her eyes. "We must free them and find a shuttle or some vessel they hold here. This facility must have security craft." She turned to him, voice trembling. "We do not leave without them." He nodded, admiring her courage. Together, they worked the controls until the transparent barrier slid up. Arathna dashed inside, kneeling by her mother's side, whispering her name. The older woman stirred, recognition dawning. Tears again welled in Arathna's eyes as they embraced, their spines trembling in unison. Cynric stood guard at the door, scanning the corridor for threats. One by one, they released the other captives in that row of chambers, 7 in total, including 4 of Arathna's clan, 2 from another reptilian species, and a trembling amphibious child. Each emerged confused, weak, but relieved to breathe free air. Arathna guided them into the corridor, leaning on Cynric for support. He felt her glow intensify, tears sliding down her cheeks at the sight of her clan, battered but alive. Then alarms blared. Red lights flashed as hidden sensors must have detected the unauthorized releases. A voice crackled over the intercom. Security breach in Sector 3. Detain all unauthorized personnel. Damn. Cynric muttered, heart pounding. We have to move. This way. He led the group down the corridor, searching for an exit or an armory. The captives, some barely able to stand, clung to each other for support. Arathna helped her mother, who was pale and trembling, though she managed a grateful nod to Cynric as he passed. They turned a corner, and came face to face with a squad of armed guards. Laser rifles hummed. Freeze! Cynric swore under his breath, reaching for his meager sidearm. Arathna stiffened, tears glinting on her cheeks. The clan behind her let out low, fearful cries. Without warning, the corridor lights cut out, replaced by a flicker of emergency glow. Over the facility's speakers, an automated voice announced the system malfunction. For a split second, confusion reigned. Run! Cynric shouted. The captives sprinted past the disoriented guards. Cynric fired a few wild shots, forcing them to dive for cover. Then he and Arathna bolted, hearts thundering. They led the group through twisting corridors, the facility's layout a blur. She clung to his hand, luminous spines guiding the way in the dim lighting. Alarms wailed, metal shutters sliding down at random. They barely squeezed under one before it slammed shut. At last, they found a hangar bay, smaller than the main docking area, lined with sleek security shuttles. The door was locked tight. Cynric set to work, but the lockdown protocols were in full effect, making it agonizingly slow. Laser blasts echoed behind them as guards advanced. Arathna and her clan shielded each other, fear etched in every face. Still, there was determination there, the flicker of hope in their luminous eyes. Arathna's mother squeezed her daughter's arm, tears of gratitude mingling with agony at what they'd endured. Another volley of shots forced them to duck, a chunk of wall exploding in sparks. Cynric cursed, fingers flying over the terminal. Almost, got it. Suddenly, a hail of fire pinned them down. Arathna stood protectively before her mother, luminous tears trailing down her cheeks. Cynric was about to make a desperate stand when one of the security shutters behind them exploded inward. To their shock, a squad of unknown fighters stormed in, trading blasts with the facility's guards. For a moment, confusion reigned as laser bolts crisscrossed the hangar. One of the new arrivals shouted, "Get the captives out! Go!" Her voice was sharp, commanding. She wore a battered flight suit, no insignia, and the look of a renegade. Could she be part of some vigilante group? Cynric didn't know, but he seized the chance. With the guards distracted, he finally cracked the terminal. The hangar door hissed open, revealing a sleek shuttle inside. Inside, now. He yelled at Arathna and the others. They scrambled aboard the shuttle, half carrying the weaker captives. Cynric sprinted to the cockpit, scanning controls. "Hold on," he called, flipping switches. The craft hummed to life. Through the viewport, he saw the mysterious fighters still engaged in a firefight with Etheris's security. One of them was struck down, but the others retreated, letting the shuttle's engines spool. Arathna's mother collapsed into a seat, tears streaming down her cheeks. Arathna hovered over her, whispering words of comfort. The hangar door parted as the facility's outer shields disengaged. Cynric gunned the engines, the shuttle barreling forward into open space. Laser fire followed, but he jinked the controls, pulling free of the station's immediate defenses. A dizzying swirl of stars greeted them as they soared away. He breathed a shaky laugh of relief. They'd done it. The clan was free. Arathna joined him in the cockpit, tears still shining. She pressed her forehead to his, spines quivering. We saved them, she whispered, voice thick with emotion. You saved them. I don't have words. He fought back his own tears. You did this, too. All of us. He cupped her cheek, heart overflowing. Let's get clear of here and find somewhere safe. Behind them, her clan huddled together, the other freed aliens offering hushed expressions of thanks. Arathna's mother coughed weakly, but a faint glow lit her spines. My daughter, you have found a worthy mate, she rasped in their native tongue, or so it sounded. Arathna flushed, glancing at Cynric with teary eyes. He set a course away from Etheris's station, worried about pursuit. But scanners showed the station reeling from internal chaos. Perhaps those mystery fighters had inflicted enough damage to hamper a chase. Exhilaration and disbelief coalesced in his chest. He reached over, grabbing Arathna's hand. She squeezed back, and in that single gesture, he felt every moment of closeness, every tear, every time their bodies had ignited with more than simple chemistry. They soared toward the edge of the Orith belt. Cynric's mind spun with next steps. They'd need a safe haven, possibly rejoin the wayward star if it hadn't been impounded. But for now, they had each other, and her people were free. He turned to Arathna, who gazed out the viewport, luminous tears marking her cheeks. In her eyes he saw hope, gratitude, and love. They drifted into a calmer stretch of space, the shuttle's engines purring. The freed clan members murmured among themselves. Arathna knelt by her mother, offering water and a gentle embrace. When she rose, she met Cynric's gaze, crossing the small cockpit to stand beside him. Her spines glowed softly. All this, it is more than I dreamed, she said, voice tremulous. My people live, though many are lost or gone. We can rebuild. And you are part of that future if you wish. His throat tightened. He stood, wrapping his arms around her, mindful of the heavy swirl of emotions. I want that, he whispered. I want to stand by you, help your clan, and be with you. Her tears broke free, but this time they were tears of profound joy. She pressed her lips to his in a trembling kiss, and he kissed her back with equal fervor, ignoring the curious glances of her clan. In that moment, they weren't human or alien. They were simply two souls who had found each other in the chaos of the galaxy, forging a bond that transcended fear and difference. She pressed her face into his neck, luminous patterns dancing across her cheekbones as she wept with relief. Quietly, her mother's frail voice called Arathna's name, drawing her back. They tended to the clan, offering what meager supplies the shuttle had. Over the next hours, they nursed the weakened captives, forging a plan to find a world where they could hide and recover. Cynric managed to rig the shuttle systems to track the wayward star's signal, hoping they could regroup. When at last they found a small outpost on the fringes of known space, they landed. The place was little more than a fueling depot, but it offered respite from pursuit. Arathna's clan stepped onto solid ground, blinking at the dim sun overhead. Her mother leaned on her daughter's arm, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes as she beheld open sky again. Cynric supported Arathna from behind, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned, gazing into his eyes. A wave of luminescent color rippled across her skin, and her lips parted in a tender smile. You have given me and my people a chance at life, she whispered, tears threatening once more. I never believed I would find hope, or love, in the arms of a human. I was wrong. He brushed a thumb across her cheek, leaning in. We found each other. And we're not done yet. There's a whole galaxy out there. His voice caught as he realized the depth of what they'd endured together. Then he kissed her slowly, unashamed of who might see. She melted against him, her tears mingling with the warmth of his lips. It was a kiss that promised a new beginning, a future shaped by trust, empathy, and the fierce devotion forged in their darkest moments. When they finally parted, he kept his forehead pressed to hers, heart pounding. So, what now? She glanced back at her mother and the other survivors, who were gathering around them. The question hung in the air. Then Arathna gripped his hand, glancing up at him with unwavering resolve. We rebuild. We help my clan find a home. Maybe it will be your ship, maybe a planet of our own. But wherever we go together. He nodded, emotion tightening his chest. Together, he echoed softly. Their clasped hands told the rest of the story. For them, the path ahead wouldn't be simple or safe. Slavers might lurk, corporations might still desire her unique biology. But they had faced nightmares and emerged bound by a love that transcended worlds. The final tears Arathna cried that day were tears of possibility and belonging, not despair. With Sinric by her side, she felt strong enough to greet the uncertain dawn of a life no longer defined by captivity or fear, but by an alien love that was as boundless and bright as the stars that had guided them home.